the news, and I'm probably going to get fired, but it's worth it to get this information out there to people. So now, as you mentioned, a couple weeks after that sighting, we have the Roswell crash, and this is the game changer, because now there's physical proof that this is happening.
Correct.
And I know that you've been spending a number of years researching that in particular. We've had Jesse Marcel Jr. on the show before he passed, and he explained to us, exactly what it was like, exactly went through. But for the people who are listening now that are new to that, why don't we kind of walk them through both, what happened and what the supposed official version is of what happened?
Okay. Let's go back to about the late 1970s. Now, this event we're talking about happened in 1947. The late 1970s, a great researcher and a great person by the name of Stanton Friedman, and you may have had him on the program.
Oh, yes, a couple times.
Stanton found, at that time major, though he did get promoted to colonel, Jesse Marcel. He was the intelligence officer of the 509th Bomber Group down in Roswell. And the Jesse you had on the program was the son of that Jesse. Mm-hmm. And his father retrieved the parts of pieces of the craft, put him in his truck, and before he went to the base, he stopped at his house, and he brought it in to 2 o'clock in the morning and put it out in his kitchen on the floor, and his wife and Jesse Jr. Got to, for all intents and purposes, play with the stuff. And there was that metal that, went back, you can crumple it up, and it was like memory metal, and it would just unfold. And then there was hieroglyphics on a few things, et cetera, and so forth. So that basically, in a nutshell, was Jesse Jr.'s story. But Jesse Marcel was the intelligence officer who ended up being the fall guy. This is really, really interesting, because that was on the night of, it was on the July 8th, like 2 o'clock in the morning was July 8th. On that day, July 8th, the commanding officer of the 509th, which is Colonel William Butch Blanchard. Colonel Blanchard, was informed immediately, or close to immediately, about what had been discovered. And he gets his public information officer, Lieutenant Walter Hout, who, by the way, you can see a live interview of him on YouTube. He's passed away, but a really, really good interview with him. He was the public information officer that went to the Roswell Daily Record, another newspaper, and then 2 radio stations with a press release that Colonel Blanchard dictated to him, and that was what was put into print. And what was there? Now, here's the part that's new. The part that's new is Colonel Blanchard did this at about 11 o'clock in the morning. He had Lieutenant Hout come in, Lieutenant Hout says in that interview, which you can see on YouTube, he says that the colonel had a notepad, and he just read off it verbatim what he wanted the lieutenant to do and what he wanted to take to the newspaper and the radio stations. And so he did exactly that. He said he says a low-level lieutenant doesn't tell, a full-bird colonel that you're doing it wrong, or say it this way or say it that way. And you'll see him say that. So that happens on the 8th. This information is now out in the public domain. I mean, there's a lot of parts to this, but I'm just going to trying to stay simple with it. Colonel Blanchard takes and this is on the internet, so I'm not saying something, making it up. Mm-hmm. Colonel Blanchard takes a 3-week vacation following that announcement. Oh, really? The most important thing that was ever said on planet Earth? And yeah, I'm out of here. I got 3 weeks. I'm going. No, I think something else happens. I think General Roger Ramey from the 8th Air Force, or the 8th Army Air Force, and the Pentagon, probably. Now, this is now I'm going off script now. I'm just making this. I'm not making it up, but I'm just trying to come up with a scenario that makes sense. Mm-hmm. They wanted them out of the way, and so then they had then we have Jesse Marcel, the intelligence officer, flying with nothing to Fort Worth. And when I say nothing, when you see that interview with Lieutenant Hout, he said there was nothing on that aircraft. They took boxes. I think he said they were like empty boxes. They put them on a C-54, which was a big prop-driven transport plane, and they flew it to Fort Worth and Carswell Air Force Base, and they flew that Army Air Force Base, and they flew it there, and then they had the quote-unquote phony press conference, and they made Jesse Marcel, intelligence officer, the stooge. You know, he's holding this stuff up, and they said, nah, it's only a weather balloon.
Right.
But in reality, you know, it was, you know, bait and switch. And William Blanchard, interestingly enough, because I think, if anything, he was the one that told the truth. But, and by the way, he ended up having an interesting career. He ended up being a 4-star general. He died in 1966. He was my general in the Air Force. I didn't know it at the time, but he was my general. And that's one way to, you know, keep people quiet. But unfortunately, on May 31st, 1966, Butch dies at the Pentagon of a heart attack. Now, was it a natural heart attack? What was it not? I'm not saying. I don't know. I have no clue. But it seems like we have witnesses that have had Colonel Blanchard, then General Blanchard, and we've got them, and there's a lot of witnesses to this, not a lot, but witnesses to this, where he said there was one craft and 4 bodies, he told people. So I'm assuming, I don't know this, he's at the Pentagon, maybe he liked to go to the officers club, and maybe he liked to chat. Because here's the deal, here's a guy that was wanted to be the pilot on the Enola Gay to drop the bomb on Hiroshima in 1995. But they made him the backup pilot. This is really important. They made him the backup pilot. He was not the pilot. And so he lost his opportunity to be famous. I mean, these days, killing so many people, you may not feel like you're famous.
Right.
But at that time, he was ending the war. The bomb would have possibly ended the war, and he wanted that opportunity, and he lost his opportunity. And then on July 8th, 1947, 2 years later, he gets another opportunity. E.T.
That's true. I mean, that would.
What do you think?
Your name would certainly go down in history for that. But so then, what leads to this cover-up? Then, if there is this crash that happens, it must have been an immediate, immediately go in. They must have had some sort of plan in place already of what would happen if this came to be, because it happened so immediately. Cover it up, take this for ourselves, take this for whatever we can mine out of it, and make sure that we just, at the very least, make the story so ridiculous to the public that they'll just eventually lose interest.
Well, you may recall that it went quiet for 30 years. And if it wasn't for Stanton Friedman, who is alive and well, I see him usually at least once a year, but if it wasn't for him, who knows, it could still be a lost subject.
Right, he's the one that actually interviewed Jesse and brought it back to the forefront.
Exactly, he brought it back to the forefront, exactly.
Went from being forgotten to being probably the most recognizable UFO case of all time.
Right, and what I had said earlier, that if the Roswell crash happened, then all these other things are certainties. All of them. Living in, an oligarchy, we do probably go to the stars with a secret space program, but that's another subject. But the reality is we've got technology that we didn't want to share with our enemies and maybe others.
So we're able to reverse engineer whatever it was that they recovered from that crash.
I believe so.
And put some. What do you think might be some of the things that we have in place today that would have come from that?
Well, I mean, right now, the only ones I can think of, like I said, there's Tacit Blue, there's the TR-3B, there's all kinds of stuff that I've seen flying over Area 51 on Wednesday nights at around 9 or 10 o'clock at night, that they may not have been extraterrestrial in origin, but they definitely probably were either craft that we were flying, which may have been extraterrestrial, or that were back engineered, and we were testing them on Wednesday nights. This was in the 90s when I was apprehended out there, along with my wife.
I was going to say, you've actually been out to some of these areas, and I'm sure that even now with, I mean, there's no other word to call it, really. It's a disinformation campaign. That's what's been going on for the last 70 years. But even around that, you know, they're still hyper protective of everything that's going on.
Well, sure. I mean, you got one group that are keeping the secret, and then in the 1950s they had Project Sign, which was a predecessor of Project Grudge, and then there was Project Blue Book, which got discontinued in 1969. But you have the same government with one group keeping the secret, the other group trying to search for the truth about ET. That was Project Sign. You can Google that, check that out. Mm-hmm. It's a pretty interesting program, and they got a lot of information. Matter of fact, one of the programs one of the lecture series that I do is Hollywood and UFOs, because Hollywood is a great codependent with our secret keepers. The film industry has long collaborated with the government disinformation campaign about UFOs, shaping and controlling knowledge about documented UFO activity.
I mean, can you give us an example of that?
Sure can. You ready for some great movies?
Absolutely.
That you can go see on YouTube again, which is good. Here's one that people in the genre like, and even though I thought they wouldn't when I started to do film festivals, Unidentified Flying Objects, The True Story of Flying Saucers. That's one film. It's a disclosure film, but it's half Hollywood, half government, so to speak. But the one that's just screaming disclosure was made in 1970. By the way, the Unidentified Flying Objects was made in 1956. You also have the only airline pilot from a major American airline, which happens to be American Airlines, in uniform, in front of an American Airlines aircraft, in front of American Airlines hangar, saying he had a UFO incident. He describes the whole thing. The guy was articulate, and he was in that movie. But the one that screams disclosure, really screams disclosure, is UFOs are real. It has begun. It was made in 1979. Mm-hmm. The host was Rod Serling of The Twilight Zone. And when the movie starts, a Colonel William Coleman is in the Pentagon. They're doing a UFO disclosure film or a UFO documentary, or whatever we want to call it. And here's a guy walking down the halls of the Pentagon. And then there's all kinds of information. They have people from the CIA and all kinds of other government people in this film. Plus they have scientists. And I think what happens is, there's a group, wherever it is, in Virginia or Washington or wherever it may be, that say, we need to get some of this information out. And so, they make these movies. And whether it's UFOs that has begun or, of course, it's Intruders with Abduction. But I think just for a straightaway UFO situation, Unidentified Flying Objects, The True Story of Flying Saucers, it's about a 55-minute film. And the other one, UFOs That Has Begun, is about an hour and 20 minutes. But you can see them. I think you can buy them on Amazon. I know you can buy UFOs That Has Begun. You definitely can buy that on DVD.
I want to get into just a couple of the questions, too, from the chat room that have been coming in. And one of them comes in. The question is, with your understanding of UFOs, do you see it as being all material? And you had mentioned, transdimensional beings as a possibility, but do you see this as being a physical embodiment of beings from another planet who are traveling across space to this planet, or do you see it as being something that could be almost metaphysical in nature?
It could be either or both. I'm sorry I can't be more specific.
No, understandable, because I think that we've seen over the years with the different reports that have come in, we've seen, first of all, if we have been taking this technology from the Roswell crash and putting it into play, we're seeing something that would be matter-based and that would be of physical properties, but at the same time, we're also seeing the emergence of some things that could go beyond that. For example, one of the reports from abductees, and I don't know if you've experienced this in your abduction experiences, but, telepathy is a big part of the communication process between these beings, and that we're starting to develop more and more of that ourselves.
Yeah, that's true. And one more thing that I just thought about is E.T. has asked me to try and talk with people under the age of 25. It's interesting. I know when I work with young people, if I work with anybody under the age of 18, parents have to be there. I will not talk, discuss, invite, nothing unless
Safe way
it's
to
done,
be, yep.
Properly. And then over 18, they're like, they're all like sponges. And maybe, yes, everyone today, and I'm much older, but the reality is everybody's like a sponge these days, thanks to probably the internet.
So there are commonalities amongst the abductees we've talked about in the past. I wish one of my usual co-hosts is Matt Moniz, who has been researching this for over 30 years, and he used to work with Bud Hopkins and the Intruders Foundation, and he's a guy that has actually been part of both regression therapy with people and also been abducted himself.
Okay.
So I just wish he was here to kind of lend to this. But one of the things that we've heard is that there are a lot of commonalities amongst them, but one of the things that has kind of spilled over into the back on Earth realm is that these people find a connection amongst each other here on Earth. So they might, for lack of a better term, meet on the ship, and then for some reason they're drawn to each other here on Earth.
I don't think so. I think yes and no. The no is my opinion. The yes is, they have experiencer conferences. You go to a UFO conference like the UFO Congress, and they have a session every morning for an hour or two where experiencers all get together and with a regression hypnotherapist, though I don't think they're all regressed, but just as kind of a moderator. Mm-hmm. And they get together. But other than that, I'd say no. Except lately, past X number of years, it seems to be that a lot of these hybrids, well, not a lot, but some of these hybrids have guides, the abductees. So in other words, they're like a counselor or a mentor. So these abductees these hybrids, U-breds, come to Earth. They may get an apartment, and let's say I'm the one that's working with that particular one. And I go to his or her apartment, and I see the sofa that they got or have, and it's facing the wall. So I would say to them, Bob, you need to turn that sofa around, move it more into the middle of the living room, and put a table in front of it or something like that, or a chair next to it or something, because they don't know the way. So they don't know the culture.
And you're encountering
so they
them.
Need help.
They're all around us.
I don't have one of those. I'm busy enough doing this, so obviously they're not burdening me with any more stuff.
But what you're saying is these beings are all around us.
When we're on board the craft, everybody's just kind of like comatose, or a better use of word, comatose. We're watching a screen sometimes, and the screen shows us. It shows a barbecue scene. And people are standing around a barbecue, laughing and giggling, and we're sitting there, and we have no clothes on. We're sitting on this like bench, and we're watching the screen, and then some voice says in your head, "Don't we all look the same?" And in your head, you're going, "Yeah." And then they say, "Well, isn't it great? We can all get along and be together." That's spooky.
It is. Well,
but it's true. I believe true. The there's a lot of stuff. I mean, it's fairly heavy. I mean, but I think that for people like myself and a couple of hundred other people that are out there doing what I do or something like it, I think it's important to share the information. And if something does happen, and I don't know how, severe it would be or how not severe it is, it may be easier to digest, and that's what I want to do. I want to help educate, and like I said, my first priority is humanity.
So, how do we know if someone is a hybrid or not? Would we be able to tell?
Excuse me, Stephanie, sorry.
I said, how would we know if someone is a hybrid or not? Would we be able to tell?
You probably don't know. If you go to, on YouTube, go to Dr. David Jacobs. He's got a 6-minute video, which is like Abduction 101, but it's really good. It's really good.
Okay.
You'll feel really good about it. I know my wife's listening right now, and she's probably saying, why did you bring that up?
Well, no, it's...
Well, I brought it up because, you're asking questions, and I want to help you with some answers.
Right.
And we're going to be off the air shortly, and, you go your way and I go mine. So I send you to a place that a commonality is YouTube or Google or something like that.
Right, and
so
I feel like...
go there, put in Dr. David Jacobs, and watch his 6-minute... I mean, he's got about 5-10 different videos. But look at the one for 6 minutes. I think it's called Abduction 101 or something like that.
Okay, I will definitely do that. I was just figured I'd ask for everybody else that was listening at home, because I don't think everybody thinks in that way, that we are surrounded already. So I wasn't sure if there was a way that we could tell that someone was a little different or that they look just like us. So it was worth a shot asking, but thank you for the information.
You know what? We should have Dr. David Jacobs back on the show. It's been a long time since we talked to him.
I don't think it's been since I've been on.
No, I think it was I'm looking it up now. I think it was 2008.
Wow.
Get to him as quickly as possible. I mean, David is still okay, but unfortunately his wife passed about a year and a half ago. And last time I was with him, he was, like I said, he's okay. But I think when you if you're Skyping, I mean, you look at him and see him, you realize he's aging, and we're all aging. But I mean, he's aging, so the sooner the better to get him on.
Mm-hmm. And we definitely have to have Stan Friedman back on. It's been so long since we've talked to him as well. And
yeah, you definitely. That's right. He's already had. I think he had a stroke about a year and a half, 2 years ago. He seems to be better. He's traveling again. So that's good. So I would say definitely go for it.
And just for a moment, while we're talking about folks who have been ill, our thoughts and prayers go out with Jim Mars, who's on the road to recovery as well, from what he's been dealing with diabetes. But it certainly bears some thinking when you say you can't tell what these look like, and you're saying that these beings are around us and that we're encountering them in our everyday life and not even realizing it. Are you awakened to it, though, because you've been an abductee, because you've been around them? Can you discern when you're dealing with somebody who is one of these hybrid beings?
That was definitely my next question, too.
Well, I'll tell you, I had an experience about 2 or 3 months ago, and I was with my wife, and we were at a Whole Foods supermarket. And there was a gentleman that was a young gentleman, about, say, 26, 27, and he was quiet, and he was putting soup into a container, and he was probably going to eat it later. I don't know when, but anyway, well, I did know in about 10 minutes I knew when. But he couldn't figure out how to contain the soup in the container. So my wife said, put the top on it. So he put it on, and no talking. And then we're checking out, and he couldn't figure out how to check out. And so the person that was behind the register spoke to him in Espanol, thinking maybe he was Spanish, and that didn't work. And we know English didn't work. And he just looked at us like, huh? And so he took his wallet out, and he kind of was shuffling through it, and the cashier took the credit card with a chip and put it in. Nothing happened. And so I kind of knew that this guy may have been one of them. So I just said, I'll pay for it. So I paid it forward and got the poor guy out. And when we were leaving, it was really, really cute because he just smiled at Kathy and myself and just waved. I felt so good.
In
anyway,
some
that
ways,
was the latest experience I had with, I believe, a U-bred or / hybrid.
Now, is that typical of them not really understanding how we do things?
I think initially maybe, and that's why they may need, a guide, a mentor.
Now, do you think that that's the human error in their makeup?
Adapt. They adapt. They're smarter than we are. They are telepathic. They're different. But you just don't know. They look really good. I mean, that's I think a very serious program.
It is part of this, in at least in your experiences as you've been taken. Is this something that you are? Because you say that they try to make it so that you don't know that you are, but obviously you've had awakenings at some point during this to realize that. Does it happen at a certain time? Is there a certain way that it happens? Do you know that if you just, I don't even mean this to sound as goofy as it sounds, but if you leave the window open, does that make it more likely to happen? Are there different things that you can kind of almost tell, like, this might be one of the nights that I go?
Well, let me just tell you this. The last time I had an experience, it was about 4 years ago in our home. And first of all, they don't have to open a door. They'll go through the wall, they'll go through the window, go through the ceiling.
Which is interesting because they can, but can you go through those?
Yes, they can. They say they can. I don't remember going through them. All I can tell you is I got up. I don't sleepwalk. My wife says I don't sleepwalk. And I was walking out in a hallway in our home. And I was about 50, 75 feet away from my bedroom door towards the front door of our home. And I looked back to the bedroom door, and there were two of them. One about 4 feet tall and one about 3 feet tall. The big one, he or her, had their hand on the shoulder of the little one, probably telepathically telling the little one, get your butt over there and get that guy. I think for me, they telepathically, probably wanted me to just come outside. Why bother going through things when you can just get, UFO Jim to walk out the door and go, yo, here I am, beam me up, Scotty. That kind of thing. But I'm going to tell you, I was so frightened. If this has been happening my whole life, which I believe it has, and I reacted that strongly, I mean, it was the fright flight. I just wanted out. I wanted out, but I didn't want to go. So now when I get up, if I'm going to the bathroom, for instance, in the middle of the night, I'm usually saying, please not tonight. I have a headache.
But there's got to be something about you that they are targeting. Do you have any idea why it is that they've chosen you? Because I've got to think, out of all the people in the world, there's tons of people that would be more than willing to stand outside their house and say, beam me up. But for some reason, those aren't the people that are being taken. It's people that are going against their will.
Well, remember, it's a program. It's a genetic program. So they're following lineage. So it's not a question of it's me or them. It's me because my dad, let's say.
But have they told you what specifically about your lineage is that they're focusing on and what they're interested in?
Well, it's probably all about genetics. Mm-hmm. It's all, and they're just following. Look, yeah, people say you want it to happen. Hey, Stephanie, you want this to happen? I don't think so.
Nope.
And if you asked me 10 years ago, do I want this to happen? I would say maybe. But when it did happen, when I was conscious of it happening anyway, when I was conscious of it happening, I freaked out. Just freaked out. You know what? I've been asked, were they wearing uniforms? I can't tell you. I was asked, were they wearing shoes? What were their feet? What do their feet look like? I can't tell you. All I could see was their faces. They were the grays that you know through media. And the one was bigger than the other. And all I know is I just wanted O-U-T. Out wouldn't be the right way to go. It should be just away. But it didn't happen. And it's been going on since I was probably 2 or 3 years old, and it's okay. I mean, it's just the way it is.
When did you become aware of what was going on? I mean, I'm sure you can look back now and put the pieces together, but at what age did you actually become aware of what was going on?
Well, I probably was 20 or 30 when I put it together, but when I was 2 or 3, we lived in an apartment in Brooklyn, New York. And they came into the apartment building, and they were shuffling around because our floor in the apartment was linoleum. And so I can hear shuffling. middle of the night. I can just tell you it was dark. Was it 2 in the morning? Can't tell you. 5 in the morning? Can't tell you. I can say it was pitch dark. And they were there, and I'd ask my mother and father, you know, who's in the hallway? And they probably thought little Jimmy had a nightmare, and they said people were looking at the apartment to rent it. Well, being 2 or 3, I didn't say, you got to be kidding me. Who's looking at an apartment at 2 or 3 in the morning to rent? You know, so, but it was only till 20 years later that I was able to put 2 and 2 together. I do have the scoop mark on me. The scoop mark is done for DNA purposes, and it's like a fingerprint, and they take skin, and they're usually kind of a triangle shape. I've got it on my arm. It's a very convenient area to show. It's been examined by a couple of doctors that deal in that in the genre, and they say, well, you know, all we can say is it looks about 95% the real deal. I believe my implant is in my upper left ear. Have I been scanned? No, I'm supposed to be scanned in about 3 months. So we'll see if we get anything. It's going to be kind of disappointing if I find out there's nothing there.
Well, I mean,
I think there is, but we'll find out.
Now, how did you find out that your father was taken?
Somebody had to be taken in the genetic, in the family. So it had to be either my mother or my father.
Okay, but
I say my father only because he seemed to be smarter than the average. That doesn't mean he was the one. It could have been my mother.
But you don't know for sure that they definitely were.
I don't know.
Okay.
That's a feeling I have.
Because my thought would be, if I knew this was happening and it was genetic, I wouldn't have any kids, because I wouldn't want them to have to, you know, be part of this program.
Guess what? I have no kids.
Now, see, maybe that's part of the deal. You know, maybe that's part of what goes on with it. One of the things that I always ask people that have these experiences, what about the people who are around you? So if this is happening and your wife is there, what is she experiencing when you're being taken?
Well, it's probably the effect that they can do telepathically. They just wave their hand, and it's like probably taking 25 Ambien. I mean, it's
okay.
They're out. They're just out. She has no. And then when I came, then that time that I was taken around 2 or 3 in the morning, I was back an hour or 2 later. I can't tell you exactly. And I was sitting on the edge of the bed, and it was like 4:30. So I don't know what that all means, except for the fact it got me to do with the Sonoma International Film Festival in Sonoma, California, which is a mainstream film festival. We have a portion of it called the UFO Symposium, and we had a alien abductee panel. We had 3 women that had recall of some of their experiences. They were on the panel, and as my moderator, I had you may not know him, but when I tell you who he is and what he was, you're going to go, really? It's Dr. Charles E. Young. He was the chancellor of UCLA in Westwood, California. You drive, and he was the chancellor for 29 years, I believe the longest-serving chancellor in the United States. He also, when you drive in to UCLA today, you're driving in on the Charles E. Young Avenue. And then there's also a library, the Charles E. Young Library. He was my moderator of an alien abduction panel. You'd never believe I couldn't believe the crowds. I mean, it was like, I could have rented a stadium, filled it up. Unfortunately, I could only get about 200, 250 people one way or the other in for that presentation. And he started off with an interesting representation. At first, I just, my jaw dropped saying, oh, don't be saying this. He said, I'm not a believer, and I'm not a disbeliever. I'm open-minded. I'm an educator, and I'm open-minded.
So
that's the right thing to say.
Absolutely. What's the thought
and then
process?
3 people went on to tell stories that would have blown your mind.
What do you think the thought process is of these beings to have folks like yourself and those who are out there telling these stories and sharing these stories at these conventions and writing books and going on radio shows and spreading the word that this program exists? How have they taken that, and how have they not silenced that if it's something that they want to keep silenced?
Do you mean our cabal, or do you mean E.T. or?
Yes, no, they're definitely the extraterrestrial beings. How have they allowed this to be told?
About,
because really, I'm sure it would just be an easy mind wipe away from keeping you from being able to spread the story?
Well, it's probably, it's not fairly easy, but it's somewhat easy to say that I've done lectures on abduction. And I've even done one, let's say, with Dr. David Jacobs. And I did one with Linda Moulton Howe. And we did it together. And it wasn't a big crowd. It wasn't a big crowd. So it's almost like, la, 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 I guess. On the other hand, I can do crop circles, and we pack the house. Or I can have some film festivals, and we'll pack the house. Or I'll have other experts, whether I'm Skyping them or not, if they're in person. So I think it's just...
I've always felt... while the government's able to do it, while the government's able to allow this to go on, because you hear researchers all the time that say, I went out my door and there's the black sedan with two guys in dark suits sitting in it, and we hear these stories all the time. But I also think the government looks at it as, if we have this UFO and this abductee subculture, if enough people are out there sharing their experiences, the more people that talk about it, the more likely it is that there's one or two people who are just out there looking for attention and are just, wrong or just misrepresenting what happens to them. And if we can just have that happen organically and then expose them, it kind of debunks the entire community. So I think that from a human standpoint, from the the shadow conspiracy standpoint, it makes sense to let people get together and talk about it. I don't see how it would be something that the extraterrestrial beings would want to allow to happen, because that element of surprise is probably the best thing that you have. But from the way you're talking about, it doesn't matter anyway. If you try to resist, they're still taking you.
Yeah, I think it's fairly safe. I don't really have any specific information. Everything we've talked about is available on the internet, basically. I can't talk on the internet. You don't have necessarily me talking about ETs in my hallway, but you can go on to YouTube or Google or any of the UFO related sites, and they have all kinds of abductees, doing regressions, being filmed, et cetera, and so forth. So I don't know. It's almost like it seems safe. Safe not only for me, but safe to talk about, because it's not something that's going to upset an apple cart. I didn't say anything tonight that the Pentagon is going to go, oh, my God, this guy's dangerous. No, there's nothing that I said today that's not available to everybody.
What's funny is, as we're talking about this, we just saw the UFO bicycle show up outside of our studio in front of the big glass windows. All of a sudden, I just look out there and I see these different colored lights, and it's just some kid on a bike.
That is horrifying.
It was pretty freaky for a second. But
Right.
So one more time, though, before we let you go, let's give your website information out for everybody so that they can find more information about you.
Perfect. It's UFOJimSonoma.com, one word, UFOJim, SONOMA.com, UFOJim Sonoma, or UFOsareal.com, UFOSRREAL.com. They both go to the same site. So if you can remember easier, UFOJimSonoma.com, go that way.
And the one last question we're going to ask you, this one popped up in the chat room as well, and it's a good thing to ponder. And the question is, how do we know that what's going on with you and the abductees is the work of extraterrestrials, and it's not some sort of human experiment that's using extraterrestrials as a screen memory?
And I can't say one way or the other. I don't know.
Well, I don't think if you ask...
That's an honest answer. I mean, I can come up with a bunch of,
I don't think they're going to tell you the answer if you ask them either. So, do you think that this is something that's going to happen to you again, or maybe now how much you've been talking about it, maybe that makes you not a likely candidate anymore?
You mean for abduction?
Yes.
No, I think they don't care. It's got a program. I mean, there may be a point where I get to be a zillion years old, and they don't want me there anymore for whatever reason. I don't think I'm in a breeding program anymore. I'm not sure. I know because, anyway, I don't think they're doing that, and so maybe they're bringing me in for a tune-up once a year or twice a year or 3 times a year. I don't know.
Well, next time you go up and just put a little bug in the ear, just mention the name Stephanie Burke.
Stop that.
Oh.
Do not.
He wants to meet you.
Right. I do have a question, at least.
Yes,
do you feel as though they have any interest in psychics for their program?
Do they have any interest in
psychics?
In psychics?
People with psychic abilities, yeah.
Psychic abilities? possibly, maybe because you're easier to communicate with.
See, you're a prime candidate.
Well, I'm only asking
Possibly.
because of my weird
Possibly.
experience that I had. So
She's going to try and gouge out her third eye right now.
yes.
Well, Jim, thank you so much for joining us. This was a great discussion, and we definitely want to have you back. We want to have you back on when Matt Moniz is here, and we can really get into some good discussion and debate.
That'll be great. Thank you all for having me on.
Thank you. It was a great conversation, and we look forward to having more.
Okay.
Take care.
Take care. Good night.
That is UFO Jim Ledwith joining us. And again, as he mentioned, you can go to his websites. I have the UFOs Are Real site up right now, UFOs, then the letter R, and then real.com. And the other one as well, UFOJimSonoma.com. Right. So you can go to those sites and check out everything about him. And as he was mentioning, there's a ton of information on YouTube. There's a ton of documentaries. And now they're starting to work their way into some of the streaming services. There's a ton of stuff on Netflix. There's a bunch of stuff on Hulu. So you can actually go and find these documentaries now in a much easier way, because these streaming services are being programmed by people who are putting together what they think people want to see, as opposed to, what they want to allow you to see.
Of course.
So this information can get out there easier. And for example, the Stan Romanek documentary is up there, and I'm not going to even I'm not going to get into the story of Stan Romanek right now, because we don't have enough time. It's just, there's a lot of lurid stuff involved with it. And we had Stan on the show years and years ago when he had his original video that he captured of an alien looking into his son's room. Mm-hmm. But there's been all kinds of accusations since then. But I'm just putting it out there that is a newly released documentary on Netflix if you want to check it out as well. So what we're going to do is we're going to hook up with Ashley for the Week in Weird, where I'm going to open up Skype as I'm talking. But she will give us the news of the week. But before that, we'll just let everybody know that next week we're not going to be on. Right. Because we'll be all day long and all weekend long, Saturday and Sunday. Stephanie and I will be at the Ocean State Paracon. Right. It's happening at the Assembly Theater in Harrisville, Rhode Island, which is, if you're on the South Coast, a 40-minute drive. If that, yeah. 45. It takes me like an hour and 10 minutes to get there from my house. Mm-hmm. So, from New Bedford, probably about 45 minutes. And it's a nice ride. Basically, it's like, for those of you who are familiar, it's like heading to Twin River. And then you just keep going past where Twin River is. And you go into like the heart of Rhode Island, like real New England-y, looks like something from a jigsaw puzzle. And as you go down there, you just end up at this little theater, this little church-owned theater right alongside the river. And it's a perfect spot to spend a couple of days, especially when the weather's nice. And it should be. It's right in the little downtown area, so there's plenty of foot traffic coming by and huge lineup of guests. Who are some of the guests that people can see? We have, us, of course. We also have... I would list us last. Dustin Perry will be there on Saturday only. Samantha Hawes will be there on Sunday only. Shari DeBenedetti will be there all weekend with us. We also have Amy Bruni, who will be there Saturday only. We have Scott Porter from the Tennessee Wraith Chasers coming up and spending time with us for the whole weekend. The Gettysburg Ghost Gals will be up. We also have Keith and Carl Johnson, Rosalind Bound. Who else is on there, Tim? Who am I forgetting? Chuckles the Clown. You forgot Chuckles the Clown. He'll be your new best friend. I'm trying to look and see what we have for lectures, too, because there'll be lectures going on all day Saturday and all day Sunday. So there's a lot to see. There's a lot to hear. It's definitely not something that you want to miss, for sure. And, yes, the weather will be warm, but you can also escape inside and listen to the lectures where there is beautiful air conditioning. That is the best part about it. And I think most of the people that come in for my lecture are just coming in for the air conditioning. That's okay. They're like, we don't want to listen to this guy talk, but it's so hot outside that we just want to come in for a few minutes. We have Saturday lecturing. We have Chris DeCesare, Dustin Perry, John Brightman, Tim Weisberg, myself. And then Sunday, Rosalind Bound, Keith and Carl Johnson, Ron Murphy, Bill Brock, and Andrea Perron. And you can find all of this information at riseupparanormal.com. Yep. And we also have it linked up on the events page at SpookySouthCoast.com as well. And speaking of events, next Saturday night we have a special event going on. And Stephanie, you can let everybody know about that too. Yes. So Tim and I decided that we were going to do a spooky event following Ocean State Paracon right after. And that will be at the Governor William Sprague Mansion
in Cranston, Rhode Island, and you can grab a ticket now. We expect them to sell out, so it'll be Tim, myself, and Porter from the Tennessee Wraith Chasers joining us that night, and it should be a good time. I'm excited because they haven't allowed anybody in for investigation in a really long time.
It's been years, and so you can get those tickets. Go to SpookySouthCoast.com. You'll find the link to get tickets for Spooky at the Sprague. We also still have the tickets on sale as well for Ghosts of the Gateway coming up in August as well. But yeah, definitely get on those tickets because we're going to be putting out signs at Ocean State Paracon, signing people up. And you know that when Porter's out there and he's sitting at his table and he's got the poster up for it, everybody's going to want to be signing up. So make sure that you can get your spot now. It's going to be, it looks like it's probably going to be a pretty intimate event. And you get the chance to investigate a place that really, I don't think anybody's done it in a number of years. So these ghosts are probably chomping at the bit to be able to, interact with people.
And you get the one-on-one time to investigate with Porter as well.
Yes. And this is a very rare New England appearance for Porter, so make sure if you're a fan of Ghost Asylum, maybe you want to get some of the inside scoop as much as we can squeeze out of him on the new show that's coming out.
Right.
You can come out and certainly come and meet him at the Ocean State Paracon, which is raising money for the Rhode Island Coalition Against Domestic Violence. But also a portion of all the event ticket sales is going to go back to them as well. So we want to make sure that we get as many people out there to help support both Porter coming out here and also to raise money for the Sprague Mansion, the Cranston Historical Society, and the Rhode Island Coalition Against Domestic Violence. So you definitely want to make sure that you get your tickets as much as you can. So I'm just trying to connect with Ashley here, and we'll see if we can bring her on. Let's see. Can you hear us, Ashley, okay? Oh, hang on.
Just kidding.
Can you hear us now, Ashley?
There's a lot of backseat.
That might be, you might have to turn something down on your end.
Oh, there it goes.
Yeah, because I don't have any thing up on this. I was smart this week. I made sure I turned it
For
down
once,
ahead of
it's
time.
not your fault.
You can't blame me for this week's.
No, it's good now. It was just like backfeeding a little bit.
I think because before you were kind of on the hold, and we hadn't actively connected with you. So.
Oh.
Just as it's a learning experience with this.
Most definitely.
Just a few years ago, we didn't even have this capability to make it sound like you're right here in the room
We're
with us.
super fancy now.
Heck yes, you guys are. I see you guys with the multi-cameras on YouTube.
Oh, we don't
Thanks
mess
to Matt
around.
Costa. No thanks to Tim and I.
And just as a heads up, Matt and I were talking earlier tonight. He's already going to kill me for even saying this. He's like, don't promise things we can't deliver on. But we've already begun talking about the Bridgewater Triangle investigation show for this year. He's got this look on his face like, shut up.
You're going to jinx it.
Stop
That'll be fun. You guys will have fun at that.
Well, we do it every year, but each year we try to make it a little bit better than the year before. And he's got some cool technical ideas that might help, and actually stuff that we might be able to utilize with you as well.
Oh, heck yes, I'm down for anything.
Well, don't say that, because then we're totally going to make you the guinea pig for everything that we try to do.
Yes, I want to be the guinea pig.
Well, I've been through some crazy stuff, so I'm ready for it.
So you have some news for us, do you?
I do, and this wasn't planned. I didn't know your guest was going to be talking about UFOs and aliens, so it kind of goes in perfectly.
Maybe you were abducted and they put the idea into your head.
You weren't supposed to tell anyone that.
Okay.
That was a secret,
Listen.
and you blew it.
Sorry.
None of that. None of that.
So, the story behind Marilyn Monroe's death is that she died of an overdose on August 5th, 1962 at the age of 36. But there's a new documentary coming out called The Unknown Knowledge that believes that her death is just a cover-up story, when really she was murdered due to her much-knowing knowledge of the UFOs and extraterrestrial life, and that she threatened to go public with it, with all her knowledge. I personally don't know what to think of it. I mean, this article just came out about a few weeks ago, so there's still a lot of more investigating to go on with it. But I've been looking for the documentary. It hasn't come out yet, so
it makes sense if you think about it, because Marilyn Monroe had a lot of problems with drug abuse, which people say, well, obviously that's why she died, but that also could have been because of what she was dealing with, and she was also very close to President Kennedy. So maybe she was let into information that the rest of us weren't.
That was another thing that in the article it said, because she had such a close connection with the Kennedys, that she was the main target.
And if you look at it as a whole, maybe the Kennedys were targeted for that reason too.
That's a good point too. I mean, I feel like this article could be expanded a lot more. So it's definitely something I'm going to keep my eye on.
And yeah, for sure. Let us know when the documentary comes out. And speaking of documentaries, I don't mean to crap on any of the news stories that you might have coming up, but did you see the report that came out this week where there's a documentary that's going to air on the History Channel, I believe, where they might have found proof that Amelia Earhart was actually kidnapped by the Japanese. She was taken in as a prisoner by the Japanese.
I set a recording for that.
Yes, actually, that was going to be one of my stories, but then I found the Marilyn Monroe one, and I was like, oh my goodness.
You're like Marilyn Monroe was way hotter than Amelia Earhart, so I'm going with that story.
She is gold, hair goals right there.
I mean, I don't think I'm being, wrong when I say that. I mean, Marilyn Monroe was a much more attractive woman than Amelia Earhart. Not that it matters; they both contributed greatly to society. But I'm just, it's not a sexist thing; it's just a fact.
It's your own personal opinion.
Oh.
Well, what else do you have for us before I get myself in any more trouble?
Right.
Yeah, so we're just going to keep going. So the next story I found was on your Facebook page, Spooky South Coast on Facebook, which was linked to your Twitter account, actually.
Stalking us, actually.
Fancy.
Yep, that's what I do for a living. I stalk people. This one was entitled Aztec Towers of Human Skulls Uncovered in Mexico City. Now, personally, for me, anytime something that's been hidden for numerous amount of years automatically strikes an interest for me.
Me too.
But in this case, this article says it was found from over 500 years ago, which I was like, oh my god, super cool. Like, where can I get my hands on this? Which obviously I'm not going to, but quoted from the article that you can find on BBC News, they were expecting to find just men, and obviously younger men, because they were warriors. And now the question is that they think they might have found some women and children, because archaeologists have found more than 676 skulls in the site next to Mexico City's Metropolitan Cathedral, which was built over the, I might be saying this wrong, excuse me, Templo Mayor? I'm not sure, which is one of the most important Aztec temples. So I can only imagine what they're going to find next.
That's a lot of skulls.
Yeah.
That's, like, people freak out when they find one. Like, hey, I was digging in my backyard and I found a human skull. Like, that's weird enough. Imagine having that many.
676. And I guess they just keep finding more as it goes on. So another story that I'm going to keep my eyes on, because super cool, 500 years old. I mean, I think it's cool.
Absolutely. And do you have one more story for us?
I do. And this one's titled, Do We Really Know What's Going On in the Ocean? I know that's really a vague statement, and you're probably what are you doing? What are you talking about, Ashley?
It's the last great frontier.
And sharks scare me just as much as aliens.
Well, we had a shark sighting where I live just a few weeks ago, so
in your
I'm
house?
Out of water. No.
Okay.
No, not in my house, not in my pool, in one of our local beaches, so I'm staying out of the ocean from now on.
Awesome.
But I'm going to personally raise my hand because anytime I see nasty seaweed, I freak out. Anything that touches my foot grosses me out. Not to think about what else is going on. But in the deep sea off of East Australia, it's been noted that there are this new form of sea pigs, sea spiders, and weird faceless fish.
What?
But they're not letting it go uncovered. Quoted from the article, it's a part of a 1-month voyage unsolving the sailing to the edge of Australia to the continental plate, where the depth sharply drops down to 4 km, which I'm guessing is pretty deep. I didn't do the math. Nets are trawling the sleds where they can use the marine life to be found in the deepest of the sea. So they can find out more of the third world captures of fish in new science.
You're just solidifying my feeling about how I never swim in the ocean.
Yep.
Well, we can swim in the ocean. I guess we just stay away from Australia.
No, I don't want to go out there at all, because even like a horseshoe crab freaks me out.
This is super creepy. So I'm looking up what a sea pig is, because now I need to know.
Well, a sea pig, that does some kind of interesting.
Right. However,
extra salty bacon comes from a sea pig.
Ew.
Oh my god.
Now that I'm looking at it, I realize that I learned about these on my daughter's little Disney Junior show called Octonauts. And I could probably sing the entire song to you about sea pigs. But they they feast on sunken corpses.
Yes.
How
So there's
creepy is
obviously
that?
like. So now you put that in my head that you got weird faced animals, and now you have dead people at the bottom of the ocean that they're eating off of.
So we
Never going
we
swimming
went to
again.
we went to the arcade a few weeks ago with my son, and he won a bunch of tickets playing games, and they had narwhal
Yes.
stuffed animals, and so he starts telling me all about narwhals. I'm like, well, those aren't real.
Yes, they
And he starts
are.
like telling me all about them, and I'm like, no, they're not real. I've never heard of that before. And he starts telling me all about it, and I was like, oh my god, well, I had no idea that was even a real thing. So it just
Do you want
goes
me
to show.
sing the song for you?
No, that's fine.
Oh, okay.
It just goes.
I think you should.
I should not go into the ocean. I should just stay away from the ocean.
You've seen Elf, right?
Yes.
I saw it like once.
So
I was not
there's
that
a
impressed with it.
narwhal right in the beginning, and it said he says, "Bye, buddy. Hope you find your dad." That was the narwhal.
Well, that's probably why I thought that it wasn't a real thing, though.
Probably.
So
But they
anyway, there's so many weird things in the ocean that I'll stick to my pond. Where the worst thing that's ever happened to me is I got bit by a pike on the nipple once.
are. What?
Right.
Ow.
What?
Although every time I go out there and I go too deep, I'm like, wait, there's snapping turtles in here.
Right.
But I'll take a chance with just snapping turtle and nipple biting pike, as opposed
So what
to
you're saying
everything that's
is
in the
I
ocean.
should find something
my
that's
God.
in your pond that's bad.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. The worst thing that ever happened to me at my pond, for real, I had to punch a swan once.
A swan?
Swans are the a-holes of the bird community.
Listen, this entire conversation's going downhill. Your nipples are being violated. You're punching swans.
I had to punch a swan once.
We have to just take this down a notch.
When my son was little,
Oh my
and
God.
because he's always been a great swimmer. So he would be like 3-4 years old, and he'd be like jumping off the dock and swimming like far out, like further than I'll go.
Mm-hmm.
And so he's out there. Like I have what's called, the mucky stuff. You have like that
Ugh.
nice clear sandy area where you can swim, and then you get to the area where all the mucky stuff is. And once I get to the mucky stuff, I'm good. That's already over my head. I don't need to go any deeper. And so he's actually out past that. And all of a sudden this swan is like coming toward all the people. And you would think that a swan wouldn't come toward the people.
Right.
So I tell him to come back in. So as he's swimming in, like the swan's kind of following him in. And the swan is like getting super close. So I'm like yelling, get out of here, get out of here, get out of here. And it wouldn't move. So I like tried to swim between me and between my son and the swan.
Mm-hmm.
And the swan's getting all like honking at me and everything, like making that horrible swan noise. And it like kind of like dipped toward me. Like it was going to like peck me. So I had to like push its head away. So I just like hit it with my fist. And I punched the swan accidentally. I didn't mean to. Like I just was kind of brushing him away, and he did not go away. Like we all ran. Everybody that was in the water ran out of the water, and the swan just owned the beach for like the next 10 minutes.
I'm hoping we come across a swan at Paracon so I can see you do this.
There are swans there.
You can't.
So-
You can't punch swans in front of me.
The swans might be like, we heard about you.
Right.
We saw you on the poster.
You're that guy.
Right. So we all came
The
down.
Underground Swan Club discusses you regularly.
First rule of Underground Swan Club is you don't talk about Underground Swan Club. All right, Ashley. Well, thank you very much for giving us the news and for giving us a stroll down swan punching memory lane.
No problem. Have a great night, and I'll see you guys this upcoming weekend.
Yes, I
All right,
can't
See you
wait.
then.
Yes.
Have a good
All
night.
right, bye.
Bye.
And so like I said, it was an accidental. I was just trying to brush the swan away. I would never abuse a swan because the swan could kick my ass.
I don't know how I feel about this, Tim.
They're nasty, nasty creatures. I think I've learned.
They do. They hiss.
I'm sure they do.
They hiss.
But remember who
They're
you're
like-
talking to.
I really do think that like the prettier an animal is, just the more of a
Right.
jerk it is. Like, look at monkeys. Monkeys aren't cute.
Just because it's pretty doesn't mean it's not a jerk.
Right. Monkeys. I think
there's
it's
gonna be
like
a joke
it's like
coming
Mean
soon.
Girls. But like monkeys are not like monkeys are cute, but they're like not attractive creatures.
Spider monkeys are cute.
They're cute, but it's not attractive. Like you don't look at a monkey and say, "What a beautiful monkey!"
Not
You're
like
like,
a
"Oh, that's a cute
peacock.
monkey." So I think that, and peacocks are kind of
jerks.
jerks.
Okay.
So it's proving my point. But the monkeys get along with people because they're not that good looking. So they're like, yeah, we can hang.
Mhm.
So I'm except for that monkey apparently that bit somebody at the Brockton Fair.
Awesome.
That Chris was talking about. He's plan
really?
on him
Yeah.
talking about that for the entire show tomorrow.
I remember that that lady who had a pet. She had a pet like chimpanzee,
And it ripped her face
ripped her
off.
face off.
Yeah, she had to have like a face transplant.
That was
Maybe she was a
horrible.
jerk.
She looks like Nicolas Cage
Horrible.
now.
No, it's like, well, the thing is, like, swans,
She's wearing Nicolas Cage's face.
monkeys, peacocks, everything. You have to realize these are animals.
Right.
They're wild animals.
They're wild animals. They're not made to be.
Right.
You don't keep them as pets and name them Gilligan. But no, apparently a monkey bit somebody at the Brockton Fair trying to feed it an apple,
Awesome.
like late at night. And as
Imagine
Chris
that.
was saying today, like if somebody's feeding you apples all day and you've had enough apples, you don't want any more apples, you bite their finger. And so apparently she's suing the monkey now, according to Chris. All right, well, that does it for this week's show. As we said, there'll be no show next week because we will be at the Ocean State Paracon and we'll be having our Spooky at the Sprague event. So why not just get tickets and come hang out with us?
Yes.
We'll actually perform an episode of Spooky South Coast before you as we're investigating, if that's what you want.
And there will be no punching swans.
No swan punching allowed. But if a swan gets up in my face and gets loud, like, I'm not just going to back down.
I will take care of it.
You know what I mean? Like,
I'll
if
save you.
if a swan wants to step, we're going to have an issue.
Right.
I mean, I practice bird law, but
What is happening?
when it comes to swans, it doesn't even enter into the situation. All right, so again, we'll be back in a couple of weeks with more
Foul
Spooky
play.
South Coast. Oh, man.
I was waiting.
Oh, that's perfect. So as I said, we'll be back with more Spooky South Coast coming up in just a couple of weeks. You can check out all of our archives on YouTube. You can also check us out on the Dark Matter Radio Network and also on the Open Box Paranormal Network. So many different places to get the show. Go and check out some of the past episodes if you haven't listened to them before. Watch the videos on YouTube. And remember to follow us on Twitter at SpookySC. And also sign up for our mailing list at SpookySouthCoast.com as well. So until next week, for Matt, for Stephanie, for Chris, for Ashley, I'm Tim. We want you all to stay spooktacular.